right. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to Grounded Moments podcast. I'm excited today to have the chance to sit down with my dear friend, Michelle Worley. We're going to, our heart today is to sit down and just have a conversation for the two of us as we are, as therapists, as parents, as partners, trying to navigate the world in which we're in. And so, Michelle, you and I are going to kind of wander into some conversation today, but I thought we'd just start, and for those who have perhaps never met us, just to introduce ourselves. So my name is Brian James McMahon. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm based out of Kansas City, but I work both in Kansas City and in Southern California. I work with individuals and couples. I do a lot of consulting work with churches and leadership teams and staffs as well. So that's just a little bit of my context. Michelle, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I am Michelle Worley. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in Missouri, and I own Great Oaks Therapy Center, located in the Westport area of Kansas City, that I miss dearly right now because I really like my office, and that's not where I'm at. So that's a little, I don't know what else. I'm a Enneagram 7. That's important for people that care.
Yeah.
So understand when I have all sorts of ideas and go all over the place.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, your whole experience, because you're working out of your house right now. So so much has changed in life just in these last couple of weeks.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So where are you? We'll kind of start here and then go into some more thoughtful conversations. But what we like to do, the practice that we engage with ourselves, what we encourage all of our clients and the people we work with, is we always want to start where we are. Right. You've heard me say, Michelle, a lot that we're not lost because we don't know where we're going. We're lost because we don't know where we are. And there's something about when our feet get pulled off the ground in this moment that increases the disorientation that we have in life. And so let's just start there. Where are you at? How's your world spinning? What are you doing to try to keep your feet on the ground?
So it's wild. It's a wild shift. I think I realized in the past 2 weeks that I've been lying to myself about not being an extrovert. And I've had a lot of people where I'm like, I'm not an extrovert. I'm not an introvert. I'm an ambivert. And I've really held strong to that until this week. And then I saw one of those memes, which I think memes are mostly keeping me alive in this time. But one of the memes is, check on your extrovert friends. We're not okay.
Yeah.
And it feels that way. It feels like, I mean, it goes with my personality, which you definitely know, Brian James, but that feeling of being trapped is a very real thing for me. And so trying to keep it engaged when I'm in between sessions and trying to be playful with my kids. And like, even when I'm in the middle of a session, I'll hear them giggling and I try to pause and pay attention to it. Sometimes I even use it in the sessions. Sometimes they will laugh and giggle at the most awkward times. And then other times it's perfect. Like it's wildly perfect. So I'm trying to slow down and notice those moments because that's actually what they're going to remember from this whole time. I think there's a chance that they'll look back on this being one of the most connected times they've ever felt to us.
I think that's a real good possibility. I am certainly on the other end of that spectrum as an introvert. There's a part of me that wants to utilize this as an abdication of all social responsibilities and just disappear into a cave and not care about anyone else. And I actually have to constantly remind myself that this is not a time for disconnection and isolation. This is a time for creativity. This is a time to figure some new things out. And for all of us, I think it requires different kinds of energy. Right? You have to connect without the actual presence. I know I was talking with my wife about this because she's also an extrovert and has so much of the way that she connects is hugs and physical touch and being able to be in the same room and experience people. And all of, maybe not all, but the vast majority of the moments in the things that actually feel connecting to her, she's lost access to.
Yeah.
I, on the other hand, have all of the access to all of the connection that I want because this is a connecting moment to me. Sitting by my,
your whole life.
I've been doing this my whole life, right? Like that. And so I have to utilize energy to go, do not take advantage of this for my own sake. And it's fascinating Because I can hear that tension in you of going like, I'm going nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm on the other hand going like, I need to not isolate.
This is me going to Disney World without any people in it.
And for those of you who haven't interacted with Michelle or I before, an empty Disneyland that I can go on all the rides is like my dream, and it's like Michelle's nightmare.
That's terrible. I feel it every time we talk about it. I'm like, I might throw up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw up right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a hard season, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really hard.
Yeah. And
so I look for silver linings. Like that's a
Mhm.
normal part of my personality too.
Right.
And I see them. I really do. I see them everywhere.
Yeah. And I don't know about for you. I think one of the most in my face challenges is the actual at home changes in rhythm and dynamic, right? I think with my clients moving to video, actually the relationship piece stays the same, right? When I'm sitting down with you over video, when I'm sitting down with a client over video, that actually those moments that we come into can actually be quite similar to the moments that we have in the room, if not the same. So that isn't changing a ton for me. What's changing is increased time at home around each other. And that's not a bad thing. I love being around my wife, but our rhythms are different, right? When we had clear work schedules, we knew when we could interrupt people, when we couldn't interrupt people. Now no one knows anything, and there's just a level of anxiety. At least that's my experience. How is that for you, working out of your home with your kids? And
I think because of the kind of work that my husband and I do, it's been really easy for me to communicate to the kids, and I've used different kind of creative ways. Mostly not threatening. There might have been a little tinge of threatening.
Yeah.
But when there's a lot of signs that tell them don't come in the room, they haven't interrupted at all. So that has made it way easier for me. For him, on the other hand, he's having to do all of his work from home at the table where they are running around him all day long. And so I get a little bit of a reprieve every time I have a session. So that part's been tricky. And then I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
Like, that is very, very real. Like
Yeah.
the exhaustion of not being able to sit with a person face to face. It requires a whole different level of energy for me to stay engaged.
Yeah.
And so that's been wildly different.
Yeah. So we're both coming into this a little bit on the worn out, tired side of things. And I think in some ways our hope with these grounded moments is not to escape from the fatigue and the tire, but actually to settle into it, not in the sense of like settling in and allowing it to like crush us and defeat us, but just kind of catching our breath together, navigating some things, having some conversations. I think in particular, as we are therapists, we have a particular way of looking at the world, of looking at situations. We pay attention to certain things that maybe aren't things that everyone is paying attention to. And so I think in each of these podcasts, wanting to kind of lean into a particular conversation. And I know when you and I were talking earlier today, you were talking about something that you're noticing that you have both some concerns and just some thoughts about. So why don't you just kind of jump in and share?
Yeah. So I don't think this is unusual. This is happening a lot just in general, but especially right now with so many of us glued to our phones and glued to the news and Facebook and all sorts of different avenues of seeing how people are interacting, but not really being able to be face to face to have like actually person to person connected. That there's a lot of like a real lack of compassion at times that I'm seeing. Judgment about how everyone's responding to this. And we're all navigating this for the first time. That's not completely true. I know that there are communities of people that have faced pandemics, that have faced all sorts of, judgments and racism. And this is not brand new. A lot of people are leaning into this for the first time. And so judging people and how they're responding to it. And sometimes really vocally through messages on Facebook. I've just seen a lot of different ways. And I think that's the area that I'd love to lean into, is just having a conversation around that. Like, why are we all responding the way we are?
Yeah. What are some of the, I mean, because there's probably extreme responses, but when you talk about people responding in different ways, like kind of paint that spectrum of what are we talking about in the sense of what you're seeing that you're going, wow, these are quite diverse ways of people's responses to what we're dealing with.
Well, I mean, I've seen the pictures of people on spring break just acting like it has no bearing on their life. And so it's really like a response to this being an overreaction or an underreaction, maybe. And then the spectrum and the wide spectrum, and why people are making decisions they're making to leave the house, and why people are leaving the house, and judging if people are considered essential, but they're still leaving the house. There's just lots of posts about that, like people coming in contact with others and saying, you are choosing to have this continue if you step 1 foot outside of your house for any reason.
Well, I mean, I think we're on some therapist Facebook groups, and I mean, I think that's something that I see all the time, that one of the big questions is anyone continuing to see people in the office? Is anyone working from the office, even though video, right? So like, you're doing video sessions from home. I'm doing video sessions from my office because I have a baby at home, and doing multiple sessions interrupts nap time, and my daughter's room is right next to the room that I would use as the office, right? So it doesn't work for me so well to do it from home. But every time I get in my car, and I know my neighbors see me get in my car and I'm driving to work, that I'm like, what are people thinking about that? Am I being judged when I'm in my office? The people who are still choosing to see some people in person I mean, I hear some very specific reasons and why people do it, and then they get roasted. So I'm with you. I'm seeing a ton of these reactions.
Yeah. And it shifts every day. Like one day someone might be on this end of the spectrum, and the other day they're on another end of the spectrum. And when we don't, I hear my kids in the background, by the way. And I hear my husband.
They're wonderful.
Yeah, they are. I can tell they're having fun. I can tell they're enjoying. They've built forts everywhere. Yeah. So I know they're having fun. And I know that I also told them, you got to kind of keep it down during this call.
Right.
So, which I'm fine. I'm just don't envy my husband right now.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about kind of how you're seeing the different kinds of reactions, right? Because we talk about almost a more avoidant reaction, kind of a minimizing, hey, not a big deal, just keep going life as normal. That can get pulled into, like, some people are going, it's a conspiracy theory, right? There's all sorts of explanations for why it's not a big deal, and people have like multiple ideas. Or you have people that go, this is the end of the world, it's the greatest disaster ever, and then there's this panic, and then kind of all in between. I mean, those are kind of like the extreme responses, and then multiple nuanced versions. Like, because it's crazy that one moment, that as we're experiencing the same cultural moment, there can be so many different responses to the exact same experience.
Yep. Yeah. But I mean, that is how trauma works. That's how grief works. This is just, we're redefining what grief is, really. That's all. That's kind of how I'm viewing it, that we're needing to do some of that. Because as you were talking, I even thought about some conversations I've had with people where one partner was like, my spouse is not taking this seriously. And you can see the shift, and you can see them go, I'm panicking. And so we're just, a lot of times it seems like we're just making some pretty quick snap judgments about how people are responding based on what their behaviors are. But if we don't slow down enough to actually have a conversation with them, then we don't really know. So someone can look calm, cool, and collected and actually not be at all. But if we don't slow down and we make assumptions about how they're doing, because we're not asking, for whatever reason, we're not asking, it's so much of it is just rooted in our own pain, our own stories of pain.
Say, you were talking about that a little bit earlier. Go follow that train of thought about how our current reactions aren't just about the situation that we're in right now, but are actually rooted in and connected to other things. Jump on that train of thought.
Well, I'll use the example of myself, that when I feel like my needs are not going to be met, then, or that I'm unsafe in a situation, then I will respond one of two extreme ways when I'm really rooted in pain or responding out of pain. So I'll either overcompensate or avoid. And so this is a perfect petri dish for me if I'm not present, which I'm not all the time. I'm really not. I think I'm like a 70-30 split maybe today in this moment.
70% present?
Yeah, I think today. Maybe Sunday wasn't. But yeah, there's days that I'm not.
In this moment, we're just taking an hour at a time.
Right now. Yes,
Yeah.
in this hour, good 70-30 split. But so I can vacillate between those two places. And this is not a great time for me to always feel safe. I'm not always feeling safe. I'm certainly aware of wanting to have my needs met and wanting to meet the needs of my family and my clients and my supervisees and all sorts of people, my like extended family, like worrying about them. And so just overabundance of stories in my head that are rooted in a place of my needs are not going to be met. And I will not be safe. And so if I respond and I'm not grounded, then that response from someone else on the other side of me, it's going to hit their pain. And
so you're saying, because I want to make sure I'm understanding you, and I want to make sure that whoever might be listening to this is understanding this as well. And maybe they're already way ahead of me and I'm just trying to catch up. But so it sounds like what you're describing is your experience going through this current pandemic craziness. One of the things that it hits on for you, one of the underlying pain points that has pre-existed this moment.
That's
right?
Yeah.
It's not brought up from this moment, but has always pre-existed this, maybe not always, but came up somewhere. Yeah. And that this moment is tapping into is the pain that comes up for you when you are afraid your needs won't get met. Am I understanding that right?
Yep.
And so kind of what you're saying is all of us entered this moment, this pandemic, with pre-existing pain points, unsettled experiences that come in with us, that this one just happens to tap into, creating a variety of reactions. And you're saying that your underlying pain thread of the fear of your needs not being met, which doesn't, that you use the word like doesn't feel very safe. When that get hit, you said you had you kind of go a couple different directions, overcompensating or just avoiding. Am I tracking with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is difficult when it's difficult anyway. However, we're all responding when we are able to identify where that's coming from. It's difficult to balance that because if I know I have a tendency to overcompensate and overdo, and I want to generally have boundaries around that to make sure that I'm not doing that all the time because I'll wear myself out. I won't be reliable because I can't actually keep up with all of the ways that I overcompensate. But I also have people that are struggling and needing, guidance during this time. And I want to be available for them.
Right.
So
when I think that's such a challenge for us as a society right now is, and I work with a lot of pastors and work with a lot of churches, right? And who are trying to mobilize to say there is a massive amount of need that is growing up right now. How do we be ready to meet that need? And part of it is if we're doing it in this place of reactivity, right? For you, it's that overcompensation, right? When you are functioning in overcompensation, the help doesn't always feel helpful.
Yeah.
Right? That actually your true help is when you are grounded, when you have been able to own, I am scared of my needs not being met. And then however you grab a hold and get your feet back on the ground, right? And I know for me, the underlying current that I bring in with me is this overwhelming feeling of powerlessness, right? That I love being able to contribute. Strength Finders tells me that my number one strength is strategy. And when I am in a moment where I have no idea what's going on, when there is all sorts of messages coming from all over the place, the amount of powerlessness that I feel when I can't fix this, I don't even know how to think about this yet, right? There are things that are I'm orienting myself to that I can lean into that. But when I hit, right, when this current moment hits on that underlying nerve of powerlessness, I think that those two extremes, right, and I think even physiologically, right, like there's a fighting, or there's like a fleeing, or and I kind of connect fleeing and freezing, because freezing is kind of like an ultimate fleeing, like let me just flee from everything and just completely shut down, right? So we kind of have those two extremes, and I know for me the fighting is going like, let me just control everyone, let me tell everyone what to do, let me step in. But that's problematic because I actually don't know everything to do. And so now I'm controlling things, but doing so out of my own panic around powerlessness. Or I go, fine, y'all figure it out. No one knows what's going on. And then I vacate a place that could actually really use some leadership and guidance, because I'm vacating it because I have this experience of powerlessness.
Yeah.
And is that, I mean, I feel like this is kind of what you're noticing is happening around us a lot.
Yes. Yeah. And if I don't know that about you and you don't know that about me, which we already do,
right?
We know each other well enough, but not everyone knows everyone else that much.
Mm-hmm.
But if I didn't know that, it would feed right into my own feelings of not measuring up or being good enough, or and now the relationship's not safe because you have left, when really that's just your pain that you've brought into this. So I can be aware of that and not take it. So I'm not taking it personally.
I keep wanting us to simplify this, but it just is complicated.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, on the one hand, it's simple in the sense that I have an underlying pain thread. You have an underlying pain thread. When this social circumstance hits that underlying pain thread, I react in one of these ways.
Yep.
When this circumstance hits your underlying pain thread, you react in one of these ways. Yep. Where it gets complicated, like you just pointed out, is if I am in one of these reactions, right? I even think about this in my own marriage, think about this with the therapist that I supervise and am training. If I am in, nobody knows what to do, I'm just going to isolate and protect myself. I can call it I'm introverting, right? I can use that as an excuse. I got all sorts of language to excuse that isolation, but it's this sense of I feel powerless. I'm just going to kind of bail.
Yep.
When I am then in relationship, whether it's like with you, who is like, I'm not going to have needs met, or people who feel like I'm being rejected and not being helped, my pulling away because it's my pain reaction actually re-triggers and re-traumatizes and hits you in that space.
Yeah.
And even as I'm holding, I mean, I'm seeing the screen and watching myself hold these hands and go like, I feel anxious trying to hold all of this. And I feel like what you've alluded to, and I kind of want to hear you say more, is it feels like the way to navigate this isn't to try to hold this and to hold this and make sure we're controlling everyone else's pain, but you talked about knowing my pain and knowing your pain. And when we can talk about that, it seems to do something with that. Jump on that.
So it's slowing down in the moment or after the moment and coming back to it, because it's really difficult to do it in the moment a lot of times. But if you can slow down and say, what is happening is everyone's in pain. To some degree, everyone is in pain. We can't always know. And we can't always slow down. Like, it's best for me not to slow down with the person in front of me in the checkout line and say, hey, let's talk through this because you did this and now it's triggered something in me. We can't do that all the time. I did do it at Target once.
How'd it go?
I've since gone through the self-checkout line.
Yeah.
Jason was with me that time. That was great.
Woo.
Don't do a trauma training and then go to Target and think that you're going to help. But if we can, it's self-compassion and it's compassion towards others, that knowing that they're going through something too, and it's not going to look the same and we're not going to respond the same. We still have responsibilities in how we treat people and how we come back around to it. But if I can just know that if you pull away from something, that we're going to come back to it.
Yeah, I think, like, as you said it feels like what the worst thing to do is to be thinking or convinced that I'm not having a pain reaction.
Yeah.
And
just everyone else is, or that no one is.
Or that no one is. Because if I'm reacting, if I'm feeling triggered, I feel powerless, but I'm pretending that I don't feel powerless. And because I actually feel powerless, and now I'm isolating and I'm withdrawing, but I'm just calling that being an introvert because I'm not actually in pain. And then that has an impact on others. We can't talk about it because I can't even own that, man, this is messing me up, that this situation is really impacting me, and I'm struggling to stay grounded and stay connected.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's different parts of us. I do a lot of this language with clients, that there's different parts of us that serve a purpose, and we don't need to hate on those parts, but there's parts that are going to try to manage this. There's parts that are going to try to push some of those other feelings away. And they all exist, and they all existed before we ever came into this moment in time. They were already there. They didn't just show up. But to turn towards them and have compassion for them is really important. It's really important.
Yeah. The more we circle around this, the more I think it's really critical for us as a people, those of us who are living in communities, or those of us who are living with families, to really hold on to this recognition that what people are experiencing today isn't just about today.
Yeah.
Right? That people who have gone through traumatic moments of rejection, abandonment, being without, that when we're looking at this situation, it actually brings up all of those. Yes. When you have people who have gone through experiences being rejected and abandoned and alone, this situation is bringing up all of those. When you have people who have been in situations where they haven't been good enough to fix it, where they have been powerless, and that's led to painful experiences, where their own inadequacies have gotten them in trouble or created friction in relationship, this is a moment that's going to bring up all of those. And so, and because there is, right, that the whole thing that we're dealing with right now isn't just this emotional level, right? Like, if we all dealt with the emotional level and we're able to own our pain and connect in relationship, that doesn't eliminate the pandemic, right? That doesn't, because we have the genuine, like the social health related issues that we're dealing with as a society. And I think what we're talking about is, while we are trying to navigate how to function societally, to do the things that we need to do to keep businesses open, to continue, right? As therapists, we talk a lot about continuity of client care. How do we continue to care for clients and when they're not employed, and right, like how would we have like the very functional, practical navigation of what we're dealing with, but we cannot forget that this is actually triggering already pre-existing things for everyone.
Yeah. It's powerful when you allow yourself to slow down and think about that, because it reminds us that we're all human. And there are things that I watch for in myself that come from training that I've done, and it's difficult. But when I'm responding, I'm going to ask myself, like, if I am responding or feel reactive, is it reactive or is it curiosity? Is it compassion or is it judgment? You know, there are certain responses that we will all have that can tell us if we're actually responding from our like true core self, or if we are being reactive to something.
And to say, I wouldn't do that, is so different than saying you're dumb for doing that. Right. And I think, connecting to what we were just talking about, what I choose to do is very much rooted in the emotional experience I'm having of this moment.
Yeah.
Right. That there's a functional element to it, but there's often also an emotional element, and what you choose to do and how someone else chooses to respond. Right. I can even imagine, like, as therapists, that those of us as therapists who have been through moments where we've been abandoned by others are going to probably be much more likely to continue to see people in person, because we want to avoid our clients having, right. So that also comes out of experiences. And that's where I think what you're talking about of noticing am I doing this out of a reaction standpoint? Am I panicking that my clients are going to feel abandoned? So therefore, I'm going to set aside wisdom and just do whatever it takes. Or am I able to recognize I am having this reaction? How do I hold this in light of the situation? How do I be kind to myself that going, this is freaking me out?
Yeah.
Ground myself, reclaim that sense of identity that says I'm actually am good enough and I'm brave, right? And that all of the things that I'm experiencing are valid. And those are what ground me, and what grounds everyone is going to be different. And when I'm grounded, I can say, okay, this has been my experience. My clients might not feel abandoned by moving to video. I might, they might not. So let me not put on my pain onto others. And I think that's kind of what you're alluding to when we talk about the judgments we have of others.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like so often when we're judging others, we are putting our own pain onto them to say, this is what I would feel like in this situation. Therefore, this must be what you're experiencing in this situation, when actually we probably have no idea.
Yeah. And you said something like in this moment, like how I'm responding in this moment, and the moments are shifting so fast.
Yes.
So fast. I saw someone said, I've been alive in all of these decades, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, 2020s, and March. Like this has felt, this has felt like a decade.
Yeah.
It's insane. And so my responses right now, and the judgments that I might have of people, because I'm not immune to those. I am not immune to pains. I'm not immune to judging others' responses to things. I'd be lying if I said that I was immune to all of it. Therapists are not immune to it. We're all struggling.
Yeah.
We're struggling too. And sometimes I feel like some therapists are struggling more than the clients that I'm working with.
Mm-hmm.
That was lightly said, but I really do. I feel like we're struggling a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And
well,
this moment shifts so much.
And I don't think it's just therapists, right? I think that anyone who's taking a leadership responsibility in this season has an added layer of pain that comes up. Right? That it isn't just about providing for ourselves and our families and surviving this time, but because I'm meeting with pastors and all sorts of things are getting triggered in them. And I'm meeting with community leaders and all sorts of things are being triggered in them, because whatever our pain is that gets triggered, right? So thinking about me feeling powerless for my own life is one thing. Me feeling powerless for my family is another thing. Me feeling powerless for our training center is another thing. So the more people I have that I am helping walking with, the greater that level of pain is when the powerlessness shows up. Because that powerless isn't selective. It just kind of is this through line of going like, it's all in everywhere for me right now.
Yeah, definitely.
So as we draw this conversation, this grounded moment to a close, what would you say to those who have sat through this with us and who have been listening in on this conversation, as we're recognizing this undercurrent of the threads of pain in our life that get tapped into by these circumstances? What would you say to encourage, to point them in a direction? I guess where do you want to go with that?
Start with having compassion for yourself.
Yeah.
And those parts of you that are in pain, because they're very real and they need your attention. And we are not going to be able to offer that compassion to others unless we've learned and are actively offering that to ourselves. We've got to start there.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Be kind to ourselves and be kind to others. And that kindness does not mean we're not acting.
Yeah.
But we do need to catch our breath. Right? I feel like we've been trying, like if life is this marathon journey, as a society, we just went through like a half-mile sprint. Right. That suddenly like we came around a bend and now there are things chasing us and we like half-mile sprint, but we still got another 15 miles of journey to go. And we need to actually give ourselves permission to go like, that winded me. That took it out of me. I'm having all sorts of reactions. I'm cramping in different places. Okay. Be kind. If I need to stop and stretch, if I need to drink some water, if I need to slow down my pace, the choices we're making today aren't locking us in forever. They're allowing us to get to tomorrow and get to the next moment, that I think in this kindness, giving ourselves permission to take each moment as we need to, so that we can get to the next moment.
Yeah. And I think it'd be really easy for us, even I can stay in that metaphor forever, probably, that to say like, this was a surprise. We had no idea this was coming, but really we've been training for this. If we can look at this as an opportunity to be human and to lean into that humanness and to lean into humanity, and see this as a jog sometimes, and it's a dead sprint. I can't actually keep the metaphor going forever, but
Right.
that it's going to shift, and there are going to be people that are at every point along the way. Sometimes I might be ahead of you, sometimes you might be ahead of me, but we're all just on the same path. We're all just, that's that Ram Dass quote that I love so much. We're all just walking each other home. We have been training for this. We have been humans our whole life. So we can lean into that, and it can be really beautiful. And that's the biggest silver lining of this whole thing for me, is we're going to have an opportunity, if we choose to take it, to really experience what it means to live in community with people.
I love that. And maybe we can do another conversation actually around that idea of living community with people in a world of social distancing, and how we navigate that, and for extroverts. And even as I was like, oh my gosh, there's like 5 questions I want to ask you just about that statement.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll have to hold that for next time.
Okay.
All right. Well, Michelle, this has been wonderful.
It has.
And for those of you who have been watching, thank you for joining us on this grounded moment. I hope you found yourself encouraged. I hope you take time to breathe. Please check in with yourself, recognize what you're sitting with. If you need help in any way, reach out to us, connect with us. You'll have seen our websites made available throughout this video. Feel free to connect and reach out for help that you need. We have interns, we have therapists at a variety of levels that are available and ready to support everyone, as many as we can, in the journey that we're on. So take care of yourself and be kind.